Welcome to the World Oil interview series on artificial intelligence in the energy industries, sponsored by Rockwell Automation. At Rockwell Automation, we're devoted to helping you achieve success. From the production to distribution of energy, we help industry leaders unlock performance, reduce risk, and drive smarter decisions. Whether you're optimizing production, enhancing safety, or navigating the future of industrial technology, our expertise is proven to deliver measurable outcomes. Together, we're powering transformation, enabling operational excellence, and building resilience for what's next. Because in the energy industry, success isn't just about what you do today. It's about what you're ready for tomorrow. And now on to the episode with your host, Global Energy Industry Development Manager, Greg Trostel.
Hello, and welcome to World Oil's podcast series on artificial intelligence in the energy industry. My name is Greg Trostel. In my day job, I'm the Global Energy Industry Business Development Manager for Rockwell Automation based in Houston, Texas. In this series, we're going to explore the wide topic of artificial intelligence as it relates to the energy industry. Our intent is to cover the very definition of AI and the basic concepts behind it, and then dive a little bit deeper into specific topics that AI will address in the energy industry. As an example, our topic today will be a closer look into how upstream oil and gas companies can optimize their production. So we welcome your input, your feedback on everything that we cover today. We're also open to hearing from individuals or companies that want to participate in this AI and energy series, specifically if you have a particular area of expertise and you want to share your story with our global audience. So with that, let's jump right into episode number 2. And I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Kevin Anstrom. Kevin is the Solutions Engineering Manager for Ambyint, specializing in upstream production optimization. Kevin, welcome, and please let's start by just introducing yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So, as you mentioned, my name's Kevin. I'm Solutions Engineering Manager here at Ambyint. I've only been with Ambyint a short time, but I've been in oil and gas about 15 years. So just some background on myself. I started my career in completions with a large service company out of school in 2010. I was there for about 3 years. For the bulk of my career, almost 11 years, I was with a large Appalachian operator, 2013 to 2023. So mainly completions and production focused. So started as a completions engineer there. Moved over as a production engineer for a couple years, ultimately managing the production engineering group for a bit, and then wrapping up my time there as a completions ops manager. So, mentioned, joined Ambyint earlier this year, and really just to set the stage for me, in terms of really diving into AI, machine learning. I'm not a developer, not a data scientist, not an AI engineer. So, my background is in energy, oil and gas. So, my perspective or my take is almost that of the end user of the technology and how it's used in the field. And then around that, I'll try to speak to both rod lift and plunger lift as we have solutions in both. But with my past experience and my expertise here at Ambyint, my role is 90% plunger lift. So that's probably, keeping cognizant of that, that's probably the angle I'll lean into.
Okay, great. For those folks out there that aren't familiar with Ambyint, can you just briefly kind of go through a quick story of how Ambyint got started and what specific challenges that you guys are looking to address?
Yeah, so early on, and we're talking over a decade ago, Ambyint managed obviously just a fraction of the wells that they did today, and they were only rod lift focused. And this was a very simple automation package. Required hardware on site like an edge device. And it was actually slightly tailored to better performing artificial lift wells, which, as you know, that's just a small part of that addressable market, right? Artificial lift is put on wells for a reason.
Yeah.
So there's a part of that addressable market, the vast majority of it, probably 80% or more, that Ambyint couldn't really tackle, specifically speaking to rod lift. You fast forward to just before kind of a pre-COVID timeframe, 18 or 19, the refocus on Ambyint as it is today, it was really, they used that formula that we're still using right now. So positioned to tackle more troublesome artificial lift wells. We've eliminated the hardware requirement. So we are a software as a service only, right, solution.
Right.
And that's really when Ambyint began to expand and improve plunger lift offerings to the same caliber as their rod lift stuff. Ambyint started as a Calgary company, moved to Houston, and then 2023 made a strategic move back to Calgary, which is where our headquarters are today. And so when we kind of look at all of that history, I mentioned those early developments with just rod lift, less than 1,000 wells in that early platform. We have over 10,000 wells on the platform today.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
And because we've had so much time in this space, we have, like I said, over a decade of data, and that's thousands and thousands of oil and gas wells that we can apply these supervised learning models to, and we can really use them in all facets of our business. And we'll get into that, I think, a little bit later.
Yeah. What jumps out at me a little bit, Kevin, is that this is probably an area that has major players, both very large and probably some mom and pop type approaches as well. So, what's kind of the unique approach from Ambyint?
Yeah, I would honestly say that we're probably one of the only ones out there doing what we're doing to the degree that we're doing it today.
Right.
I think we'll dive into that a little bit. There's auto tuners out there. There's historians with some basic optimization functionality. But in terms of what we're doing to the degree that we're doing it, I think we really stick out. And I think that history shows that, right? The fact that we've been in this for over a decade. Like I said, millions of Dynacards that are in there, thousands of wells. And I think today we have 250K of a BOE equivalent in autonomous control on the platform.
Right.
So we really are doing that to a degree that I don't think anybody else is.
Yeah. Excellent. And can you, since our topic is around AI, can you talk a little bit about specifically how Ambyint is using AI in your analysis?
Yeah, I think there's sometimes a misinterpretation of what Ambyint actually is, right? So I mentioned so often we get compared against traditional auto tuners or even data historians. And when I'm in a potential customer demo or a customer demo, there's a very high level example that I like to use to set the stage for those potential customers. So, we look at traditional auto tuners as almost making knee-jerk reactions to artificial lift systems cycle by cycle, right? They look at the previous cycle, maybe what the arrival velocity was, maybe a couple other components, and they make a knee-jerk reaction based on that cycle. That's not what Ambyint does. That'll work to some degree, but you're never really going to achieve real optimization. We're leveraging true artificial intelligence and true machine learning, and that means optimizing these systems much like any production engineer would, right? We're looking at all the past cycles, all the patterns in the data, even considering downstream system effects, and making those best fit set point changes based on all that available information, not just the previous cycle.
Right. Excellent. Anytime we touch on the topic of AI, one of the resounding themes, concerns, is how and if the technology can potentially replace expertise or replace humans. So, how does Ambyint approach that balance between kind of the human element and the technology when you're deploying your platforms?
Yeah, I guess so. This might be a lengthy one, but let me try and answer that in two parts. I guess first I'll try and answer that Ambyint internal, and then maybe what it means to our customers. So being a part of Ambyint is really kind of a full circle moment for me. So over a decade ago, I had an oil and gas executive that I worked for, and he said, "Kevin, we're never going to automate the oil field with a group of well-intentioned petroleum engineers."
Right.
And what he meant by that, I don't even think he knew to the extent of
right.
how true he was. But petroleum engineers that are handy in Excel, right, making basic tools or writing handy macros, which were great efficiency wins at the time. Those types of folks are never going to be able to build out or leverage true AI machine learning.
Exactly.
Because they don't have that proper expertise. And then likewise, data scientists, any AI expert or developers are not making these tools without oil and gas subject matter expert.
Right.
And I think that's really part of the winning formula for Ambyint, is that they've combined that expertise from both sides of that fence to make a really powerful team.
Yeah. I know. I think that's an excellent approach to it for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to touch on that. that second component, and really to lead into that, the one thing that I really like about Ambyint, they're not afraid to discuss that human element that's needed to develop these tools and use platforms like ours, because there is that subject matter expertise. There's customer facing roles, development roles, technical and people leaders. We even offer a managed services component of our product for customers to help them identify trouble wells or leverage the platform 100%. But what we like to tell the customers when we're really discussing that human element and what that means to them, we're not replacing expertise. We're an amplification of it, right? We're a workforce productivity tool. We're not a workforce replacement tool. And I think you need to know how to tailor that message to different operators as well. I think that's where some of my experience comes into play, being, in an operator most of my career. But there's really three types of groups within these operators that might manage these artificial lift wells. The engineers might manage them at one company, the operations group might manage them at another, or even larger operators, which I'm sure you're aware of, have control centers. And those are becoming more and more popular. So sometimes the operators or the optimizers at the control centers are running these wells. Engineers typically isn't too hard to get buy-in. They're typically our product champions. They see the value of the tool, right? They really want it. They're the ones that have that heavy plate of long-term high value items. So they would love to get this off their plate. The operations group, sometimes the buy-in is a little bit rougher. So there's a strategy that I've been trying to employ lately. Sometimes we want to pick that well operator, that well tender that is maybe a cut above. And because of that, he has a harder route. He has more responsibility. And you really need to lean on them to act as your ops product champion, so that he can go to his counterparts and say, listen, this program's great. It gave me all this time to do X, Y, and Z. I haven't had to worry about plunger or rod lift wells, unless something physical needs done in 12 months. And so those are the kind of personas we need to look for in the ops group. And then finally, that control center component. Those folks that run those control centers are there 24/7, 365. And because of that, they have a lot of other priorities. Their main, I think, original function was production optimization, right? Managing new tills, managing, what to do around system outages if a compressor goes down or something. But because they're there, because they have, 6 fancy screens with all the information available to them, now you see them diving into logistics, maybe logistics around development or capital projects. So they're now managing all the water logistics, or, water trucks, or even centralized water facilities for drilling, for completions. And then that segues into sand logistics. So these production control center folks are getting more and more responsibility. And to get this kind of low value task off of their plate, I think is a win-win for everybody.
Right. That's interesting, because it sounds like you guys have a role to play in just about any of those scenarios
Sure.
that you mentioned. So excellent. In terms of the kind of the value add from Ambyint, is that primarily what you hear, is that you're getting this this base level of work off of people's plates, or is there a different message?
Yeah, we've tried to quantify this for our customers, because I think we have a responsibility to do so. So, we try and tell our potential customers that we focus this to really 5 main value drivers. And that's workforce productivity, increased production, improved safety, which I hold, pretty close, coming from an operator and knowing the kind of things that happen there internally. Reduce cost and reduce emissions. So when you talk about that workforce productivity, I mentioned it's a replacement of work, not a replacement of workers. It really gives these folks time to spend on higher value items. And then from the operations side, if these things are running smoothly and optimized, you're reducing well sites visits and well touches, which that leads into improved safety. If you're not out there and you're not driving, you've mitigated a potential safety incident. Increased production, we advertise 3 to 7%. We've seen, much better than that in some cases. The beauty of the platform and, putting together business cases for folks, getting really conservative with business cases, 1 to 3% uplift, maybe saving 5 minutes per well per week, or something like that, the value is still very apparent.
Yeah, the numbers are still huge, right? Yeah,
the numbers are great. So
right.
so even when being, which I love, right? I love to say, listen, you know your wells, you know your day. I'm being as conservative as I can be, and we're still showing that this has tremendous upside for you and the company.
Right.
The reduced cost is another component, right? If you have an optimal running lift system and you're avoiding venting, you're avoiding a potential swab, job, or maybe even a workover in extreme cases, right? You're one of those in an extreme case, and you're potentially paying for the system right there. And then the emissions component is excellent, right? I mentioned reduced venting, right? If we can reduce, 1 or 2 venting events per well per year, that's huge.
Sure, absolutely. Kevin, on this podcast series, of course, we're really focused on the AI aspect of how it might affect the energy industry. So can you go into a little bit of detail about specifically for Ambyint, how you guys are using AI?
Yeah, so there's really 3 main hubs, we'll call them, of our platform. We have our autonomous set point management, anomaly detection, and then we have our analytics and surveillance, which is our visuals, right? So the autonomous set point management is really the bread and butter of our platform, right? And that's really our program driving these set points for these plunger and rod lift wells to achieve optimum lift cycles. We really are looking to achieve consistent normal arrivals, like I said, optimize those cycles, and ultimately increase production. We talked about it earlier. If you have an optimal running lift system, you're minimizing loading and venting events, and really capturing all the value of the program. Now, the anomaly detection component is really about flagging things that impact your plunger performance and your data quality. So this is something that's ever expanding too. So we have, I believe, 5 in the system today. And that is always changing, always expanding. Even the 5 that are in there, we're pulling some of those out and creating subset anomalies to be able to flag. And I've recently, mentioning that I'm not a back end guy by any means. I've got the opportunity to jump in and help with some labeling exercises, really to help drive that supervised learning for some of this new stuff. So one of the anomaly detection components that I like to use as an example is our false non-arrival anomaly. So, a false non-arrival for a plunger is typically when you can see that arrival in data, but you don't see it by sensor. So often, we're sitting down with customers and we're looking at the platform and we see a non-arrival. But then we dive into the data and we do see that typical inflection point in flow rate and tubing pressure, like I said, with the absence of arrival by sensor. So, we say, look, that sensor has either failed or has shifted off the lubricator just a little bit or something.
Right.
And after seeing that so many times, it was kind of a light bulb, right? If we're diagnosing this, why can't we have the program do it?
Right.
So now the Ambyint platform is able to go in, recognize those inflection points in tubing pressure and flow rate, and say, hey, listen, this is a false non-arrival. So you may want to get eyes on that anomaly. So likewise, we have others, just to run through some others that are in the system, leaky valve, a non-zero flow rate during a closed period. And these aren't all going to flag immediately, right? Once again, we're using patterns. We're looking at repeated patterns in data. So, 1, 2 sporadic, it might not flag because we don't want to deploy assets or resources for no reason. Once again, it's making decisions much like a production engineer would. A production engineer is not going to jump and deploy a well tender to pad because of one of these things. He's going to wait, and he or she's going to wait and see if this is something that really needs attention or not. Surface restriction, frozen sensors, miscalibrated sensors. Those are all things that are built into the anomaly detection component that flag the end user for something that they should be possibly looking into.
Right. Okay. Fantastic.
Yep. And the third part of that is just analytics. It's our analytics and surveillance component, right? And that's the customer's data cycle by cycle, and it's formatted to our AI-driven insights so they can view their plunger performance just as they need to. There's a lot of customization that's able to be done in those. So we can kind of tailor these things customer by customer. There's also a reporting feature that can be used. Looking back to my days as a production engineer or even a completions engineer, right? There's so many days where you sit down at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever it is, and you think you have your day planned out, and by
Right.
45, it's taken a totally different turn. And so we recognize that. So these reporting features can be kicked to you in any frequency you want, weekly, daily, monthly, whatever, to really help you kind of stay on task or whatever you want to see to make sure that you're helping plan your day or your team's day out, because we know how quickly those days can take a turn.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So Kevin, as we think about the future and what the next generation of production might look like and how that might be optimized itself, do you see AI as a key component that will be helping engineers and operators kind of make better decisions and move more and more towards a full optimization?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Once again, this is my perspective, right, which is typical end user. So
Mm-hmm.
apologies if my answer sounds very elementary, but I think at the 30,000 foot view, we need to ask ourselves, how do we continue to integrate artificial intelligence and machine learning along and up the decision tree from the end user perspective, right? So if I'm jumping in a tool or a platform and I have to make decision X, Y, and Z before I actually start using the tool, how does the tool eventually make decision Z for me? And then Y, and then so on, right? So continuing to back out that human element or human decision out of the process. But also, we talked about that human element earlier. We still, while still having human confirmation, where needed or where appropriate. I mean, we could probably sit here and talk about examples of how this has evolved all day long. The cell phone being one of them, right? We've probably condensed thousands of different tools right into one little thing. But I guess the highest level oil and gas example, starting from my service side and my service experience, despite not being in the industry terribly long, we're creeping up on 15 years here. I got to start for a service company that was still doing shallow conventional work, and so it was right around the time where crosslinks and gel completions were kind of at their life's end. But I got a chance to learn and work through all that true engineering work, right on site. And so I've seen a gamut of wells. And when you look at some of those small mom and pop operators and you see these old shallow conventional wells recording on, circular chart paper.
Oh, right.
That's kind of the, the genesis of gathering that data. Then we go to digital meters, but it's still local. And then being able to review that stuff remotely was huge.
Right.
And then changing that from just a view to adding alerts and alarms. And then adding recommendations maybe to the end user based on those alarms. And then finally taking artificial intelligence and machine learning to make those decisions for or with the human is kind of I think a full circle example of that. Or even, leak detection. That was primarily just, a visual thing that a human would have to go out and confirm. And now we have, drones, fitted with sorts of specialized cameras and all those kinds of things. So we could probably talk about that, all day long. I guess I should tackle that from a Ambyint specific side as well. Primarily rod lift and plunger lift now. We're kind of re-entering into the gas lift space. So with that, ultimately will come the development of being able to tackle gapple and peggle wells. So, gas assist plunger, plunger assist gas. The advancements there will help us creep into a new part of the business. Anomaly detection advancements. I mentioned that I had the privilege of working in some of those labeling exercises to drive anomaly detection to the next level. So we're always going to be able to keep expanding that part of our platform as the technology and our data gets better. The one thing that I think we owe our the market and something we're trying to tackle right now. And I think it's really going to help, to your point, a lot of the engineers and operators out there make better decisions. There's a big part of the market that doesn't have the full suite of sensors available to employ these solutions. And admittedly, I was a little spoiled, right? My past experience at the operator that I was at, we were pushing remote changes to our artificial lift wells and had the full suite of sensors 10, 12 years ago. So I didn't even realize to the extent that, that some of this information was missing. And so let's say we have a, potential customer A who has plunger arrivals and rate, but no pressure data, or customer B may have arrivals and pressure, but no rate data. At Ambyint, we're really diving into how can we service those customers, and then really how do we define how effective or potent our product is in limited data scenarios versus the full suite of sensors, right? So we'll be able to offer you a product that has 90% effectiveness, even though you don't have any pressure data, or 80% effectiveness if you don't have X, Y, or Z. And so we're really looking hard at how to tackle that part of the market, because that is the vast majority of the market out there. And we can really help in all those scenarios. We just have to really define it and be able to prove that to them.
Yeah, fantastic. As we're quickly running out of time here, Kevin, one last question. As we talk about these tools, and you talk about things like anomaly detection and being able to do the same kind of analysis when the data is not completely there, are you hoping that these kind of AI-oriented technologies will help attract younger talent into the industry, right? Because we desperately need that, and there are potentially huge advantages to be gained by employing these technologies. So, what's your perspective on kind of the attraction of new talent?
For sure, I think it definitely makes the work more dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. So, if I go back to my early completions or production engineering days with an operator, not that long ago, 2013, 2014. There was a huge amount of time that was spent on, repetitive monitoring, manual calculations. These kinds of advancements, rather than spending time on those things, people know they can now truly focus their time on the problem solving, the optimization, the innovation, and that busy work component of these roles are shrinking, right? I think that's very appealing to new talent.
Yeah.
I also think just broadly, there's a whole talent base that may never been attracted to oil and gas, or maybe the complete opposite, right? That is now looking into it because there's an entirely new avenue or new industry infused into oil and gas, in which they can make positive impacts. Whether that's
absolutely,
environmental, sustainability, or really anything. The sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic message. Okay, great. Well, I hope everyone really enjoyed this deep dive into AI and how it can directly affect improved production. Really like to thank Kevin Anstrom for being our guest on this series, Kevin. That was great. Hope we'll have plenty of chances to speak to you again in the future. Also, really want to thank Ambyint for their participation in this episode, and I encourage everyone to check out their website at ambyint.com. Please join us again for the upcoming episodes of AI and energy. We'll be diving into greater depth on additional topics. Some we touched on today. Others will include cybersecurity, safety, sustainability, things like that. So really appreciate everyone listening, and take care.
Thanks, Greg.